Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about second language acquisition, and to start with, we're going to talk about the core mechanism. Um, the core mechanism engine in second language acquisition is the learner's cognitive ability to process and internalize meaningful input through attention, interaction, and feedback, gradually developing an interlanguage system that becomes more accurate and fluent over time. The word cognitive here expresses or is the most important one because what is a cognitive ability or what is a cognitive process is the mental operation that the brain performs to process information such as perceiving, learning, remembering, problem solving, and decision making. All these processes are important at the moment of acquiring language because they will make a language more meaningful, depending on different contexts. We're gonna check the most important authors in second language acquisition, or at least the most important theories. We have the first one, which is Noam Chomsky. He talks about the universal grammar. Uh, he claims that the engine is the innate language faculty, which is some kind of built-in mechanism that allows humans to generate and understand language structures and to use this internal grammar to interpret new input and construct rules in the second language. What does the innate ability refer to? It means that learners can recognize speech sounds or identify verbs or identify nouns, and they have it in their minds, and they understand it in both ways and in both languages. The second theory or author is Michael Long. He claims that the engine is the interaction as learners actively engage with input, negotiate meaning, and modify their output. The aim of this process is to internalize correct forms and improve fluency. What does these mean? It means that learners read or hear things, then they process information, they internalize these things, and they produce the language as they think is the correct way or in the way that they feel better. Um, it is important to understand that there should always be external factors so that the learner can internalize this and then express them in a different way. Finally, we have Rod Ellis. He claims that, and we have here the cognitive and task-based approaches. In this case, the engine is the cognitive processing, attention, working memory, and pattern recognition. Learners extract linguistic rules from repeated exposure and practice, forming an internal network of knowledge. What does this mean? It means that it's analyzing language, focusing on specific aspects of language. And when we're talking about cognitive processes, it's important to mention that some processes regarding cognitive issues, yes. So when we're talking about cognitive processes, we can talk about perception, what we see, hear, touch, or taste. We can talk about attention, which means focusing on specific things and individual stimuli, right? Your memory, how how much you can memorize. Language, which is the ability to use and understand words to communicate thoughts and feelings. Reasoning and problem solving skills, and somehow also decision making skills, which are, the moments in which learners can actually use language because they are forced to based on these specific things. Now, my classmate is going to continue with the next part of this presentation.
Hello everyone. In this session, I want to show you why the cognitive or psychologistic approach is one of the powerful ways to understand language learning. It's not only about memorization rules, it's about understanding how the mind works to process and build a language. This approach invites us to look inside the brain to see how it changes through practice and experience. Um, Here we have the core idea. The mind is a computer. Our brain works like a linguistic computer. As we know, in the computer we have a hardware and also we have a software. The core idea for a cognitive approach is that our mind functions like a computer learning a language. The brain is the hardware with its memory and structure, and the rules and strategies we develop are the software. Every time we practice, listen, or use a language, we are updating the mental software, making it faster and more efficient. The evidence, practice, and processing. The Here we have practice physically change the brain. Language learning is mental skill, not mere memorization, and the brain detects patterns and frequency become more automatic through use. Numerous studies show that practice physically changes the brain. When we learn something new, like playing the piano or speaking another language, our brain creates and strengthens new neural connection. According to the research like Nick Elias, the mind learns to by tracking frequency how often we hear or use a word. In this way, the brain becomes a natural statistician or language, recognizing patterns or making usage more automatic. As a conclusion, we have the cognitive approach makes sense because it reflects how the human brain truly learns. Practice reshapes our mental structure, learning follows nature order, and our brain always seeks to understand meaning before focus on form. Learning a language from this perspective is more than memorization. It is training the mind to think in a new way.
Hello everyone. In this short presentation, I will explain how we can apply the cognitive or psycholinguistic approach in the classroom. Well, as my classroom mentioned, this approach focuses on what happens inside the learner's mind, how they process input, notice new patterns, and produce language to build real communication skills. Well, today I will show you some classroom activities that help students notice, process, and use language meaningfully. Well, from theory to practice. In this approach, learning is seen as an active mental process. Students don't just memorize words or grammar rules, they think about meaning, they notice patterns and store information in their memory through practice. As teachers, our goal is to guide them through each step. First, they receive input, then they notice forms, process them, and finally produce output that becomes fluent communication. Well, as mentioned, I will present some activities. The first one is input processing task, meaning before form. The first activity focuses on input. Students listen to a short story or read a text, for example, in the past tense. They answer questions that make them focus on meaning, such as what happened or when did it happen. After that, we guide them to notice the grammar forms that express time. This helps turn simple input into real learning, or as Bad Patton says, into intake. Well, the second activity, output practice, speaking and writing for noticing. The second activity focuses on output. Students talk about, well, what they did last weekend using the past tense, and they compare their sentences in pairs. Through this speaking practice, they notice their mistakes and receive short feedback from the teacher, like, yes, he goes to school. Speaking and writing help students test what they know and notice what they still need to improve. Okay, the third one is conscious noticing, discovering language patterns. Okay, in the third activity, students work directly with the written language. Students highlight verbs or patterns in a text, for example, all the past tense forms. Then they discuss what they notice, which forms are regular, which ones are irregular, and why. This activity helps learners become more aware of how language really works. Activity 4, task repetition. Practice to build automaticity. Okay, in this one, um, the fourth activity focuses on fluency and memory. Students repeat the same communicative task, for example, giving directions to a partner, but change some details the second time. This repetition helps them use structures more automatically and feel more confident. According to cognitive theory, this step builds automaticity and strengthens working memory, which eventually also will guide them to fluency. Okay, so these are the activities that I prepared, and I have a final reflection, how the mind learns through action. Okay, to summarize, the cognitive psycholinguistic approach shows that learning happens through active mental work. Students learn best when they notice language patterns, use the language in real communication, and repeat tasks with feedback. As teachers, our role is to design activities that help students think, notice, and communicate at the same time. Okay, dear colleagues, I hope that this explanation has helped you and eventually help your students to learn the language more authentically. Thank you.